You wouldn't believe some of the stories that get passed around up here. Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, they say, and twice as many spooky tales. Growing up, spending summers at camp near those deep woods, you hear 'em all. Campfire whispers about things that might lurk in the shadows, things your counselors warn you about just to keep you from wandering too far after dark. Back then, I figured it was standard kid stuff, meant to scare us straight. But even as a boy out there with my dad, fishing on some quiet lake or hiking those old logging trails, I'd sometimes get that feeling, like something was watching us from deeper in the trees. Dad always laughed it off, said I had too much imagination, said the worst thing in those woods was probably the mosquitoes. Thing is, sometimes I'd hear noises that didn't add up. Odd clicking sounds, or a low guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. Now, I always loved the outdoors. Picked up a lot of woodsman skills from Pop. Figured there was nothing out there I couldn't handle. Then a few years back, everything changed. I guess I got comfortable as time went by, even a bit cocky. You forget that uneasy feeling, push it down. Then, they had that little girl go missing in Itasca State Park. Emily, I think her name was. Just vanished without a trace. I live close enough, and with my experience in the woods, it felt natural to sign up as a search volunteer. First couple of days, there was a weird sort of thrill to it. Being back out in the woods with a purpose, the camaraderie of all those folks united by the same goal. We joked and swapped stories while we did the grid search. Seemed like standard lost kid stuff at first. The terrain was familiar enough. That old woodsman sense was tingling a little in the back of my mind, but I ignored it. We'd find her. It was just a matter of time. Then came day 3. Me and this older fella, Jim, we got assigned a flank route, meant to cover that eastern section of the park where it gets thick. We split off from the main group. Figured with our combined experience we'd do fine. That's the thing about the woods, though. They can play tricks on you. One minute you think you know the trails, the next thing you realize, well, you might not be as sure as you thought. Jim seemed to have one of those always-on compasses in his head. Me, not so much. But that's okay, right? We had radios to check back in, stay coordinated. That's when ours decided to go on the fritz, batteries sputtering and dying out. Jim started getting all antsy, his voice a bit too high when he insisted we push further in. I told him, protocol says if we're lost, we backtrack, try to re-establish contact. He didn't want to hear it. Started muttering about it being our responsibility to find that girl. Seemed like something was chewing at him, and it wasn't just worry. I know that look now, the glint in the eyes. It wasn't right. Finally, we agreed to split up, cover more ground. Bad idea. That's crystal clear now. But in the moment, with that nagging feeling about Emily still gnawing at me, it felt like my only choice. Second, I was alone. That's when it hit me worse than ever. It wasn't just the silence. Woods are never really silent, but the wrongness of it. That prickly feeling, like eyes were boring into the back of my head. I remember as a kid hearing stories around the campfire about, well, the Wendigo. That's what they'd whisper about. That spirit of hunger from the old tales. Shoved it down then, said it was just kids being kids. Now, with each step, that image of a gaunt, twisted figure was creeping into my mind. Then the noises started. This clicking, almost like snapping twigs but off rhythm. And further off, a grunt that sent shivers down my spine. Nothing a normal animal makes. This had a different quality to it, something almost mimicking. Something clever, trying to lure you in. I moved slower, scanning the trees, my heart thudding against my ribs. That's when I saw it. A carcass, deer maybe, but torn open in a way I'd never seen from a predator. Bones were splintered, chewed in a way that made my stomach turn. The dread settled on me like a weight then. I wasn't just lost, I was being watched. Hell, maybe hunted. That clicking got closer, rhythmic now. Then I saw them. Flashes of pale, lanky shapes between the trees. They moved too fast, too wrong to be natural. Panic surged up, and I did the dumbest thing you can do in the woods. I ran. The sun was already dipping lower as I ran, casting long shadows that made the woods feel even more menacing. Every rustle, every snap of a twig underfoot sent my heart leaping into my throat. Branches seemed to snag at me, not the way they normally would, but like something was deliberately tripping me up. Then the sounds changed. Not just the clicking anymore, which was practically right behind me now, but heavier footsteps. Something big was circling me, making those guttural growls that turned my blood to ice. That's when I saw them again. Flashes of that sickly pale skin, impossibly long limbs through the gaps between pines. For a heartbeat, I caught a glimpse of its face. Sunken cheeks, stretched too tight over bone, and those eyes, burning like embers. It wasn't an animal, wasn't anything human. God help me, I think it was the Wendigo right there, stalking me like prey. Blind terror took over. I wasn't thinking, just reacting, fueled by pure adrenaline. I stumbled, and a fallen tree trunk turned my ankle in a way that made me scream, the pain white hot. Collapsing to the ground, I scrambled backwards, my eyes wild. That's when I saw it clearly. The Wendigo stepped into a clearing barely 10 yards away. It was taller than any man, a skeletal frame wrapped in taut, corpse-gray skin. Its limbs were impossibly long, ending in wicked claws that scraped against the ground. Antlers, like those of a twisted skeletal deer, crowned its monstrous head. But worst of all were the eyes, glowing pits of hunger, burning with a malevolent fire that mirrored some gnawing emptiness now churning inside me. I gagged, bile rising in my throat. The creature's lips, or what remained of them, pulled back in a grotesque grin, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. A stench like rotting meat clung to it, a promise of the terrible fate I was so desperately trying to outrun. It let out that guttural growl again, a sound that ripped through my mind, and then it lunged. Somehow I found the strength to drag myself further, deeper into the underbrush. The pain in my ankle a distant echo compared to the terror clawing at my insides. I must have crawled for hours, long after darkness swallowed the woods whole. Then it all went black. I woke up in a hospital bed days later, leg in a cast and my whole body aching. They told me a hiker had stumbled across me babbling incoherently, miles from where I'd started the search. Emily, the lost girl, was never found. It gnaws at me, knowing I failed her, but deep down, I'm almost grateful. If I'd kept looking, the Wendigo might have found me again. When I told them what I saw out there, the creature, the eyes, the doctors exchanged those concerned looks. The ones that tell you they think you're either lying or a few cards short of a full deck. Sent a psychiatrist to talk at me, but I clammed up, didn't trust myself to say the right things. Now I'm back home, but it doesn't feel right anymore. In my nightmares, I still see those burning eyes in the darkness. And there's something else, a wrongness settled deep inside of me, like a gnawing hunger I can't satisfy. Food doesn't taste the same, never quite fills the aching void. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I swear I hear those clicking sounds outside my window, just at the edge of the darkness.